Good morning, everyone. Be- thank you. Very nice, great crowd. Before I begin, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Groundswell and Big Brothers and Sisters for generously opening this space to us today. I appreciate them standing with us and for recognizing how essential it is to gather, listen, and act together as a community. Also, a big thank you to Tiyya's staff and volunteers for all their help with coordinating today's press conference. If we can give them a round of applause. My name is Shukri Ketan, and I have the privilege of serving as the executive director of the Tiyya Foundation. My family's story is like so many of the stories in this room. I'm the child of Palestinian refugees, a family shaped of conflict, forced migration, and the quiet, unending work of trying to build a safe home somewhere new. That's why this work has always been more than a job for me. It's deeply personal. I know that displacement doesn't end at the border. It lingers, in silence, in fear, in isolation, until community steps in to help families feel whole again. That cannot be removed. Tiyya was created to be a bridge. From the day Maimuna Hussein, my wife and our founder, began this organization, she held one belief close. Families who survive unimaginable circumstances deserve more than survival. They deserve the chance to thrive and to belong. Tiyya was one of the heart and organizations in LA that has helped refugee families for the past 15 years. Our three core projects are economic advancement, where we create pathways for job readiness, financial security, and skills training. We have a culinary training program at Tiyya's social enterprise and restaurant, Flavors from Afar. Our other project is community engagement, where we build spaces where neighbors can gather, heal, and grow together. And finally, family services, where we provide immediate and practical support for our participants. Our Tea and Tots program is one of my favorite examples, where our mothers and children gather for tea, conversation, and play. It's in these circles where trust is built, children laugh, and mothers share burdens they've carried alone. This press conference today is rooted in that same vision of community, truth, and care. Together with Stanford University PhD students, we conducted an in-depth interview with Afghan refugee youth, young people who fled Afghanistan after the US withdrawal in 2021, and are now trying to piece together new lives here in Southern California. The findings remind us of what we see every day at Tiyya, that while Afghan youth carry deep scars from war, sudden evacuation, and family separation, they also hold remarkable resilience. They cope through faith, strong relationships, and the cultural ties that bind them to who they are, even in unfamiliar places. The study also shows what makes these young people's struggles so urgent today. Many unaccompanied youth, those who arrived here alone, face even higher levels of distress and isolation. Many feel skeptical about Western mental health care, preferring to be supported by people who share their language, culture, and faith, people who understand what it means to survive displacement. That's why this conversation cannot end with just data alone. It must lead us to action, to reimagine how we welcome, protect, and stand beside families who are doing everything they can to heal while living with so much uncertainty. So before we hear more about this work, I want to take a moment to introduce two remarkable people joining me today. First, Dr. Zainab Husseini is a licensed mental health clinician and a National Institute of Mental Health T32 postdoctoral fellow at Stanford University. She holds appointments in both the departments of psychology and psychiatry and behavioral sciences. She works towards bridging rigorous research with direct community care. Over the last decade, Zainab has dedicated her career to designing and scaling mental health interventions that are culturally responsive and community-driven. She has worked with refugee youth and families around the world, in Iran, Lebanon, Greece, Mexico, and here in the United States, always centering the cultural knowledge and lived experiences of the communities she serves. Her approach reminds us that mental health care must honor people's stories, their faith, and their ways of healing, not just impose Western models that often overlook the wisdom communities carry. I'm also deeply honored to have Mahmoud Omid join us. He's a trusted community leader, a passionate advocate, and someone very special to us at Tiyya. Mahmoud was once a participant in our programs. Later, he served as a dedicated staff member. And over the years, he and his family have become dear friends to us all. Today, Mahmoud continues this work as a case manager at the International Institute of Los Angeles and as a community consultant for Stanford, ensuring that research like this stays rooted in real, lived experience. His career spans US aid, grassroots community organizing, and outreach through Afghan Cultural Center and Afghan American Muslim Outreach. And you will be enjoying the delicious Afghan pastries this morning that Mahmoud's wife, Orbal, had cooked for us today. So please enjoy them, and you have Mahmoud to thank for that. Our speakers' insights today remind us that behind every data point is a young person with dreams and fears, and a future that depends on the community that chooses to see them and stand with them. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing with us that true community is where healing begins. So please join me in welcoming Zainab and Mahmoud to share more about this important work.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Shukri, for that introduction, and the Tiyya Foundation for having us be here and present our work with you today. I also want to recognize that we have a third speaker, Farzad, who is one of the folks who actually participated in this study, and he is here as a living example to share with you the wisdom that he holds. So you get to hear it in first person, which I think is really the bonus point of today's experience together. So we're going to be sharing with you a little bit some of the work that we have done, and then towards the end we'll have some room for question and answer so that we can really talk about this together as a community and just think through some of our findings and the implications that it may have for the work that we all do in this room. So in the presentation today, I hope everybody can see behind me where I'm standing. Okay. So in our presentation today, we're going to be sharing with you from a decolonial paradigm. So really thinking about, just picking up on what Shukri was sharing, really thinking about what it means to center the voices of the folks who have been forcibly displaced rather than what we may theoretically think is their experience. And so I really want to encourage you to just wear those glasses. Try to think about it from that lens as we are going through some of the findings that we are going to be sharing with you. And we're going to be trying to share with you as much of what we learned in speaking with the participants who were in our study. Yes, okay. So first, prior to contextualizing this conversation and the experiences of Afghan youth, first I want to talk about forced displacement in general. So let's just get our headspace into this world of what forced displacement means. And I think all I'm going to do now is to just show you some numbers, and I think that in and of itself does a little bit of a good job at capturing what is going on globally. So a couple of years ago, when we completed conducting this study, these were the numbers of the different categories of people who qualify as people who are forcibly displaced. So that can include people who are officially recognized by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees as refugees. So that number is close to 30 million people. But then you have other people who fall into other categories who are also forcibly displaced, also impacted by a lot of the adversities, and also demonstrate the resilience that Shukri was talking about earlier. And these can be folks who are asylum seekers, so still have not received a legal status. Internally displaced populations, folks who haven't been able to leave the boundaries of their country, which you will notice is actually the highest number of people who experience forced displacement. And then the UNRWA, which serves Palestinian refugees. I'm going to note on that in just a second. But look at these numbers. This is how these numbers have changed in millions since a couple of years ago when we created this particular slide for just demonstrating the number of people who are forcibly displaced. So as you can see, just within a short span of time, these numbers are shifting dramatically. And if sometimes in academia, we tend to be super detailed and say, well, maybe it's because some of the asylum seekers actually got a refugee status, but as you can see, the number of asylum seekers also went up. It is not the case that number came down. So as we can see this, similar to what Shukri was saying, these numbers really demonstrate that this issue is becoming more of an issue. And it is pervasive, it impacts every continent, it is an issue that deeply impacts the lives and hearts of the people who are forced to leave what they have known to be home. Which then brings us to the point of thinking about the experiences of our participants and really caring about listening to what they have to say. So I want to go over just a few psychological terms that we like to think about when we characterize the experiences of people who are forcibly displaced. This slide is general. So this slide is really just capturing and giving you the language and jargon to talk about how forced displacement impacts the psychological processes that people hold, regardless of what the context is. And although not everybody is impacted by these phenomena, it is something that tends to be generally the case and present in contexts of forced displacement. So the first one is shock. Typically, when forced displacement occurs, especially as a result of an emergency, regardless of whether it is a man-made disaster or a natural disaster, there's an element of shock and an element of unpredictability that all of a sudden something happens, your world turns upside down. And for people's psychological functioning, just the concept of shock is, it's moving. It impacts your mental health. Anything that is shocking all of a sudden that is unexpected. The second thing to think about, which is really important, is social disintegration. So a lot of the social infrastructures that people have set in place, even if governments and other forms of systemic powers are already disintegrated, usually people in their own way have set up a socially integrated, cohesive space where they function and they thrive. When these emergencies happen, some of those ties that people hold themselves are disintegrated. And that tends to be one of the most impactful for people's functioning because people depend on social integration and social engagement to just function and be able to think. All of us in this room depend on the ties that we have in our lives to be able to lead healthy lives. The unpredictability and chaos, so just not knowing what to expect tomorrow or even tonight, like not being able to plan for what's going to happen. Am I going to expect an explosion or am I going to expect peace to come about? So just this concept of not being able to plan for your next hour is very dysregulating for people's psychological functioning. And the last one that I want to emphasize is that all of these more general experiences lead to both short-term psychological distress as well as long-term mental health symptoms that can then potentially lead to disorders. At the same time, as we recognize how the phenomena that are inevitable parts of what happens in context of forced displacement, we also have to recognize that despite some of these very unsettling, dysregulating, antithetical to human existence experiences that people go through, they still show resilience. They still find ways of figuring it out. And that part is, sometimes we tend to overuse the term resilience, and we just forget about, like, it's just like this thing that we think about all the time. And yes, people are resilient, people are strong. But I think it's really important to just always remember that when we say somebody is resilient, or they have wisdom, or they have been able to make it through, it's because something horrible happened. And it's because it's in the context of some major psychological dysregulation that happened, that then they, despite that, were able to stay strong. And that's very, very important and very commendable. So it's really important to recognize what in the face of what we are saying they are resilient. And in our findings, we're going to discuss with you what those are. So very briefly, we're going to transition now to talk about the experiences of Afghans in the US in particular, as one group of people who have been impacted by forced displacement. And I'll just start off before handing the mic to Mahmoud by saying that one of the reasons among many is that the three top ethnic groups that compose the people who are forcibly displaced worldwide, 50% of them come from these three ethnic groups and these three cultures. At this very moment, what I want to introduce to you is that this is the part where we're going to use a decolonial framework to try to frame this slide over here. It is not the case that 50% make up of this ethnic group because there's something wrong with these ethnic groups. There's something wrong with the systems that interact with people who live in these parts of the world. There's something wrong with the foreign interventions that happen in these spaces, and there's something wrong with a lot of the geopolitical climates that exist in those areas. And I think we have to be really quick to pivot our own thinking instead of problematizing, oh yeah, it must be that there's something going on with these people. It's super important to take a step back and recognize the role of the systems that have shaped why these people have been forced to deal with some of these challenges. So I'll pass it on to Mahmoud so that he can give you more context about the specific experiences of Afghans in the US.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Shukri, for the introduction. Thanks, Zainab, for the information. I will go through the next slide. Yeah. We see like August 2021. What happened on August 15, 2021? Because this is a big story. The Taliban took control over the country, especially of Kabul, Afghanistan. This time, everyone who work with the US military, work with the international organization, work for the Afghan government, and work as an activist, they had the stress, depression, and feeling and dangers. What like sudden onset had to leave everything behind. Like this time on August 15, 2021, when Taliban took over the country, especially Afghanistan, Kabul, most of the people, they left their family, home, school, job, life behind. Everyone wanted to escape the country, wanted to go to the gate, rush to the gate, like Kabul airport. And this time, there was like family separation. These all things, so like not easy. Moving from a country to a new country come with challenges. But moving from a country like Afghanistan to the United States, you don't know where they are going, and also this is very hard. Like family separation, that time, a parent was not able to find their children. Like a single parent was able to come, a mom, he was able to come, but father was not able. a child, more than 100 children under the age of 18, 16, 15, they came to this country. This is very hard. Like a child without parent. In Afghan community, in Afghanistan, we have a very good family connection. This family connection, like we rely, depend on our family, our father, our mother, our elder brother. When a child, like more than 100 children, came to this country, this is very hard. Not for the child, but very hard for the parent, for the family who stay behind of them in Afghanistan. And the children who already arrived to this country with no language, no experience, nothing. This is like 1.6 million people became refugees. Like 180,000 Afghan, they refugees, they arrived to the United States, but the rest of them, some of them went through the Iran, Pakistan, and the Europe country, and 180,000 came to the United States. Like we see this amount of the people, like in August happened in a country where there was peace, there was no problem with education, with health, with school, with life, with job. But they, within also from August 15 till the end of August, this amount of the people left their country, plane by plane and airport. Everyone tried to rush to the gate and airport in Kabul. But there was no some of the people, they left their shop, their business open. Some of them, they were came from the school. Some of them came from the job to the airport. But there was no time to say goodbye to their parents. There was no time to prepare for the trip. There was no time to go and pick up some of the documents. Everyone came to the airport and also to escape the country. Because there was stress. They worked with the US military. They worked with Afghan government. Most of them, they were educated. They worked with national and international organizations. They stress, endanger the life of their life. The other plate on food on neighboring country. A neighboring country also like Pakistan and Iran, we mentioned, most of them already experienced. In the previous time of the Taliban, there was a lot of restriction, problem for the people of Afghanistan, especially for educated people. There was no privacy, there was no life for the people. Therefore, they had psychologically, sociologically, emotionally distress because the Taliban, we already collaborated with the US military, with the US government, with non-profit organizations. When the Taliban arrest, they must beheaded us. Therefore, everyone left everything behind and also wanted to escape the country. This is the time of depression and very hard. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we see as I mentioned, 180,000 fled to the United States. They came to the United States. What is the demographic of the people who fled to the United States? Who? We see collaborated with the US government. Collaborated, there was USAID, United States Agency for International Development. They already had implementing partner, and at the same time, more than 3,000 organizations, non-profit organizations, national and international organizations work in Afghanistan for education, for human rights, and for the people and also to support in Afghanistan, for socially and economically integration, for women's rights in Afghanistan. And at the same time, the civilians and family at risk, the people also right now, more than half of the population, more than million of the women, they are not able to go to the school. The school gate is closed for the women and girls. because they are not allowed to go to the privilege of education to go to the school. From last 3 years, unfortunately, they like already stay at home. This is the things, and also very hard for the civilians. Everyone want to leave the country for better life, for better education, for better possibility in the future.
Wait, go back. Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. Now Zainab Jan also will give the information, but at the same time I want to mention about the problem like happened for the people of Afghanistan. This is the problem still, and also here is some of the stress, some of the problem like they are experiencing, because the starting of the new life here come with what kind of challenges. If this is housing, this is the new system, this is the education, this is the social connection. But most of the people, as I mentioned before, they came through like with the human capital. They brought to the United States the human capital, education, degree, knowledge, and good qualification. But lack of social capital. They don't have the social networking. For most of Afghan, they have the problem. We interview, we spoke, because they don't have the social networking. Right now, most of the engineer, like graduated from agriculture, from medicine, from economic, with good qualification, but they don't know how to start the new life here in the United States, how to adjust with the new society in the United States, like in this people. Yeah, thank you, Zainab Jan.
So we'll come back really quickly to Mahmoud so that he can discuss the first one of the questions that we asked our participants, which was really asking them about what was the most salient thing that contributed to their distress. And we'll come back to him in just a second so that he can discuss that briefly. But to learn a little bit more specifically about the experiences of young adults, so learning about the experiences of young and Afghan youth, we did a qualitative study to ask them about 3 specific areas. We were interested first in learning about what were the things that made them feel most distressed in their current state. We wanted to learn what were the strategies and the ways that they used to cope with the circumstances that they had, and also what helped them be able to heal. And we were also interested in learning about what their attitudes were about seeking mental health care, and what they really themselves, what they prioritized when they wanted to seek care. And to do that, we partner with the Tiyya Foundation to carry out the research. The one thing that I want to emphasize here is that one of the things that was important to us was to build the capacity of folks who work with caseworkers and other people who are on the ground working with Afghan populations. So one of the things that we thought of, and I really encourage other organizations to also consider, is capacity building, so that like what Mahmoud Jan was mentioning, folks who, Afghan caseworkers or other refugee caseworkers from other cultures who already have certain capacities to be trained in doing things like, for example, research, so that they are able to put into practice the social capital that they come with. One of the things that we did was to train caseworkers in doing qualitative research analysis and assessments, so that they then could go and continue on doing qualitative research with their own communities. So we spoke with 31 young people who had arrived since August of 2021. 21 of them were male, and 19 of them were unaccompanied. So they just had come on their own, and they had resettled in this area since August of 2021. We conducted semi-structured interviews. I can speak more in depth about the methods that we used to both collect our information and analyze the information that we had. So I'm going to now pass it on to Mahmoud to talk a little bit about the first theme that we had, which were the main sources of distress that people reported.
Yeah, thank you, Zainab Jan. Yeah, we will come to the result. As we mentioned, everything's like it also based on the thinking. And the United States, they say like the quality of your thinking determine the quality of your decision and choices. Your decision and choices determine the action. The action determine your result. Your result determine the quality of your life. How we can create a quality of our life. Here is the source of disaster. Here is like stereotype, acculturative, like the stress and belongings. The culture, this is very important. In Afghanistan, we have completely different culture from the United States. In Afghan culture, the children must listen to their parent. The wife work at home. Most of the women, they have the housing responsibility. They have taken care of their children, cleaning, and stay at home, most of them. But especially husband is the breadwinner, financial supporter, work outside. There are like, especially 3 gates. One gate like of the house, this is the commander, the director of this house is the wife. But outside from the house, if there is anything happen, this is the male. In the United States, there must be like 2 income. Wife, husband, any adult in the family must go to the job, must have any income, must support each other, because here are more expenses. The utility, the rent, a lot of expenses, there must be work together to be financially, economically sustainable. The other is education system. In Afghanistan, education system is different here, because here is like, in Afghanistan, all the disciplines belongs to the teacher. If there is any issue between the parent and children at home, we call to the teacher. Oh teacher, because my son has some discipline issue at home, please give some lesson. There is some punishment from the teacher, but here is no. They don't know about the education system. The one things like language barriers. This is the problem when they came like with Pashto or Dari language. When they improve their language, if they are 18 years old, 19 years old, or college age, or this is the 16, 15 years, go to the school. Most of the students here, they don't have like good communication, connection, but this is very hard for the, especially new family to adjust if there is no support, there is no community connection. The other is family system, as I mentioned, there is some things here, like about the accompanied. Those people who came with the family, this is also not easy. The parents, especially father and mother, try to implement the same rule they implement in Afghanistan. No. But if they implement the same rule they already implemented in Afghanistan, will cause more problem. Because here in the United States, most of the young adults, when I thought, oh, because I would like to live alone, I want to have my own account, I want to have my own life, I want to have like my own selection for getting married, for my own life. This is the things, and also the accompanied, they have some experience like negative experience. But the parent also thinking about their, not only education, about their future, about their connection. Because they think like with the accompanied family. Like I am in this age, still and also I'm listening to my parent. But the parent thinks, and also maybe my son or daughter after the age of 18 will not listen to me. Therefore, and also we must give some things which is based on the religious, based on the discipline, based on Islam. This is where the accompanied also will have. The other is unaccompanied. People they are living. Oh, most of them also, they are here. The parent, the elder brother are in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan only, father is working, 20 people, 18 people at home, they don't worry about their life. Everything has the responsibility of the owner of the house, who is the head of the family. But here, We see most of the responsibility of the unaccompanied. There are two kinds of responsibility. Family separation is one, like loneliness. They are feeling, and also, I don't see my mom, I don't see my dad, I don't see my brother. This is the things, and also they get the loneliness because they are very much socially connected in Afghanistan. The other is navigating resettlement challenge and responsibility alone, or the housing, the new life, the education system, everything. If there is not the head of the family to give the direction, this is very hard for the especially young adult. If there is no a good mentor, a good family support, this is very hard. The other is like Afghanistan, like a gift and burden of financial support. Well, there is two problems. Especially those people who are here without the parent, family, they are thinking like they are physically here, mentally in psychology in Afghanistan. The symptom receive money call from Afghanistan. Please send me money, support me financially, but he is also responsible for the paying rent here, utility, and expenses here in the United States. During the night, go to for the security guard job. During the day, go to for ASL classes. The same time, receive money called must support the family in Afghanistan. If not support the family in Afghanistan, this is another depression, stress, anxiety for him here. Because he's thinking too. Like in one hand, this is very hard to take 2 watermelon. Sometimes now he's thinking about Afghanistan, how to support, at least will send some amount of the financially support money to Afghanistan for parents, because my mom is sick, my dad is sick, they need money, there is no job, there is no work, there is nothing. This is the other problem. The other legal change, like threat of deportation. Right now, after this administration, most of the people, they have stress of deportation because they already applied for the asylum. They receive the asylum approval, that's okay. If they have the green card, they are HIV holder, okay. If they don't have the asylum approval, they are also not able to go out from home. Some of them also call me because I am at home from last 2 months because I don't want to go out. Why? Because I'm waiting for my approval. Okay, this is the things, another depression of the deportation, but most of the Afghan family, they receive their approval and they are in good state. The other like precarity and instability and anxiety, hopelessness, limited access to resources, like unaccompanied because they also thinking about the resources. If here is someone at home, if the elder brother, father or mother, who are all, they will not think about the resources, about the family expenses. But most of them, they have limited access to the resources. Why? They have limited access to the resources because during the night they go to the job, during the day they go sleep or ASL classes. They don't have time to create the social networking, to attend the event, to go to the conferences, to make a good connection with a community-based organization, to do some things for their future. Zainab Jan, thank you so much.
Thank you. So I encourage you to think of any questions that you may have for the rich content that Mahmoud just shared in the Q&A, so that if there are any clarifications that you may need for what he shared, because there's a lot of information that, a lot of different nuances in how people shared their sources of distress. I'm going to briefly go over the remaining slides, and so that we can quickly get to the Q&A section. So one of the most important, the two types of experiences that people shared with us that helped them really be able to stay strong and find ways of thriving despite a lot of the challenges that Mahmoud just described. That was the case for both unaccompanied and accompanied folks, so people who were with their families and those who were not, was the role of faith, so just belonging to their faith group, practicing their what faith taught them, but most importantly, the ways that faith or the religion of Islam offered them to think about the world and about their adversities. So what the religion offers them is a way to construe the challenges that they were facing and their hope for the future. And that way of thinking, it's like a tool that they were holding to be able to then stay hopeful about the future. And the other one is the role of family. So being motivated to help your family move forward, whether, like what Mahmoud was describing, was about supporting your family who was in Afghanistan, or making the family who was here proud of you so that you could all move forward together. But these two concepts were really like pillars that supported people, and despite all of the challenges that Mahmoud just described, just being focused and moving forward. But one difference that we did find was that for folks who were accompanied, being somewhere with your family, so remember how I mentioned one of the most important things that happens in the face of forced displacement is social disintegration? The presence of their family here for accompanied folks allowed that social integration to happen a lot faster. So it gives you, first of all, it gives you the permission to enter a lot of spaces that are family-oriented. Different people in a family will have resources themselves, so then you now have like a wider network. There's just a lot of social networking and social integration and engagement that is happening that does not happen if you are unaccompanied. On the other hand, one of the tools that folks who are unaccompanied use was trying to build and cultivate friendships, and really depending on friends who understand you for being able to deal with the adversities that they handle. And then lastly, one of the things that we found was that some of the systemic issues with mental health care that exist in the US, as well as some of the cultural understandings of what help seeking in general means, really made people hesitant about, generally speaking, the concept of mental health help seeking. So there was a sense of mistrust and hesitance in the idea of seeking mental health care. When it was something that folks were interested in, or when it was something that folks were open to, what we found was that people who were accompanied were more interested in opportunities that could be implemented in an educational setting, so that was a part of their school or a part of some other psychoeducation, like in a psychoeducational space, because if you pay attention to the challenges that they face, it actually relates well to the educational concerns that they had. Whereas some of the preferences that folks who were unaccompanied shared with us was that they desired more group-based activities, and it makes sense because of the isolation that they faced. They're looking for opportunities to be able to integrate and build that social network that was lacking, and that they were sharing with us that was lacking. So really quickly, let's consolidate all of the information that we have heard. The main challenges that people discussed, one, were the legal challenges and how, especially its impact on family separation and concerns about threats of deportation. Daily stressors, so just the very basic challenges of something like what the example that Mahmoud just shared. For example, having to work a night shift all the time, and your entire livelihood being dependent on a night shift. That entirely dysregulates a person's biological functioning. And that's a daily stressor that across time can have an impact on a person's functioning. And then the last one is the culturative stress. So being able to, managing a lot of the cultural mismatches that Mahmoud just mentioned. However, people did mention that being connected to their faith, finding connections with other people, whether it's friendships, family, backbone, other social networks, was really, really helpful in rooting them. And while there's a lot of hesitance in accessing mental health care, and what people really advocated for was access to equitable and just social legal services, those who were interested in mental health care prioritized faith-based services, so services that were supportive or augmented how they already think about the world, and also people who share similar experiences. So we're going to close by, Mahmoud is going to briefly share with you an update. So this study was done before a lot happened in the past few months, which changed a lot of things for the experiences of refugees and immigrants in this country. So we do want to just recognize that by giving you an update about what is like today as we are speaking, what that looks like. And briefly, I just want to share with you, before I pass the mic back to Mahmoud, that in terms of the future, we're very interested in extending this research. Currently, we are implementing an intervention that was a mental health intervention that was developed from the findings that we had in this particular study, and we are testing the effectiveness of this mental health intervention for Afghan refugee youth here in Southern California. And I'm happy to speak a little bit more about that. But one of the questions that we think a lot about is the intersection of the socio-political climate and the systems that people have to navigate with their personal psychological functioning and ways of thinking about the world. Because as any of those changes, so if the systems, if the time, if the socio-political climate changes, the effectiveness of any intervention immediately shifts. And the context of both of those two factors is important when you want to think about what makes a program successful. So we're thinking currently a lot about how to constantly respond to the very rapidly shifting climate that immigrants and refugees have to navigate when thinking about what mental health interventions look for them. So Mahmoud will very briefly talk about the current, give you an update, and then we can open it to a Q&A.
Yeah. Thank you, Zainab. Yeah, I see everyone. All of you are hero because you help so much for the community, especially Tiyya Foundation and the community-based organization. Because especially about the current, I'm working close with the Afghan family. Most of the people, like more than 11 million undocumented people, live here. But they are thinking, because we start the new chapter of the life here, when we improve a little English, we enroll in the school. If some things happen, we send back to our country or deported to our country. This will be like us how to start again our life in Afghanistan with nothing, because already we targeted from the Taliban. The people in our community knows us. This is the things, so they are all the time thinking. They want, so the deportation, they want to talk with the legal team, the care team also here, help so much for most of the, people, they need help with the language, the Pashto and Dari, spoken line also help. This is the things, also to support. The community disintegration, the pace of limited resources, social and economic integration, this is very important. But here is as I mentioned before, in United States, there are more than 100,000 Afghan refugees from August 2021. Most of them are living in California. Most of them are living in California and North California, and especially in Los Angeles County, and Orange County, Riverside County, and San Diego. But Orange County is also populated area, and Anaheim was also populated for the Afghan. This is the things, and also they are looking for the socially and culturally integration. This integration not happen within one night. People and also are living here from Afghanistan more than 30 years, 40 years. They help how to support the new family. At least they think, and also if some things happen here, and also to whom we contact. This is the things, and also need help. The other is the language barrier. As I told you, also the language is the only thing for the communication. If here and also they ask, go to for the any job, if this is the security job, if this is a job on Walmart, if this is a job like any kind of job with a minimum wage, at least enough they must talk in English. But the English language is very hard for most of them. Afghan, those who work with the Afghan government in Afghanistan, they start English. English is not easy to learn, to improve within 1 year or 2 years. This 1 and 2 years is very hard. because they are not able to find any job. But they are also not able to get more support from Afghan community because we don't have the resources, we don't have big store here, we don't have big business here, we don't have more company, which is the lead by Afghan to hire at least 100, like 200, 500, 1,000 people. This is very hard. When they go for the interview, these are about the only things, like the security job, most of Afghan people, they have their own security company, they hire people with no English, but this is the things like only the door open. The other like employment struggle can cause financial stress for family. If there is no income, no life. Yeah, money can do everything, but here in the United States, if you don't have income, how to pay your rent, how to pay your utility, you must have at least a car. If you are adult, you must, without car, you are not able to find any job. Without transportation, you are not able to go to your job. Therefore, the car, there is need for insurance, there is need for the gasoline, there is need for the registration, there is need for more expenses. This is the things, and also this is like very hard, financially stressed, because most of them, and also they just work part-time. Part-time is not enough for him to support himself or herself, how to support people in Afghanistan. Therefore, this is another challenge, because he or she need to invest on himself or herself. Invest like not to get education, to get a degree, if not for the 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, at least 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, the vocational training to find any job. But for most of the people, when I'm asking, they have a resume, 10 page, 5 page from Afghanistan style. But here and also, he need to make a new resume, like for the most of Afghan client, the Tiyya Foundation already supported, and also how to make the resume, CV with American standard to find a job. The job you already did in Afghanistan. If not working, please start any job and put on your resume to start the new life with any job like need, based on the thing. This is the things like there are some current challenges. For the current challenges, we have some good news, because we have the Afghan Culture Center, we have the Afghan Muslim Outreach Center, we have some other community-based organization. They are working together to support the newcomer, the new arrival, the resettlement agency, the Afghan Support Investment Program, the PCGA program, the like Tiyya Foundation. There are some other foundation. They help this kind of the family, people, at least like they need emotional support, because the emotional support is very important. When we are doing the case management, we ask what's going on, what's the problem with the especially family. When we diagnose the problem, we can easily treat the disease like doctor. Then and also this is the thing, the only problem, they are completely new here, still, and also they don't know where to go, how to start the new life. But the new life, the social networking, the social connection, the community-based organization, they are helping also to solve the current problem situation here.
Thank you, Mahmoud John. So before we wrap up, the moment we've all been waiting for. I want to ask Farza to come and introduce himself, and then just share very briefly with you, bring to life, like a live embodiment of a lot of the topics that we have discussed in his own words.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A voice from Afghanistan. My journey, our struggle, and our hope. First of all, I want to greet you guys by saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be upon to you guys. And I'm happy to see you guys here, and thank you for being here, and thank you for patiently listening to me. I'm Fardal Fadli, and I'm from southern of Afghanistan. I born there and I studied my school in capital of Afghanistan. And as you mentioned, as Mr. Mahmoud mentioned, you guys know what happened in August 2021, and me and my family are one of the victims of those people that came and got refugee to the other countries. Long time ago, I was honored by this foundation, which aimed to understand the struggle and the real challenges that Afghan people are facing. And I'm the real example and a live example that I'm standing here of this foundation, that how it helped me and how they work and they participate in our community of Afghanistan. So as our people came to different countries, especially in the United States, we were facing a lot of struggles. Like I want to mention the most majority of these kind of example of struggles that Afghan people are facing, which is war conflict, displacement, access to education, also economy hardship, and family struggle that a lot of people are still have their family in Afghanistan. And how this foundation helped me and how it is important, it made me feel heard, it made me valued, and it made me seen to the society. I think helping a person mentally is more important and more helpful than helping them financially, because giving hope and helping people in mental way, they can improve their life in different shape or form, and they can focus on their life and their goals that they are having in the future, not just focusing on their financial support and stuff. And I'm thankful from this foundation, and thank you for Mr. Mahmoud. He helped us a lot to meet a lot of people and participate in a lot of meetings. And as my friends and everybody that I know, they're very happy, and I'm happy to be here today too. And thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Fazil John, for sharing that. So I want to just close by thanking the Stanford Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology Lab for supporting this work. And so I think we can now open it up to a question and answer in case anybody has any lingering thoughts, questions, concerns, things that you would like clarification on. We're happy to hear from you. Yes, go ahead.
So were the subjects just males?
No, they were, so 19 of them were males and the rest were females.
Got it.
They were
And do they share similar experiences as males and females? Since we know in Afghanistan, culturally females, they have different cultures and they do things differently.
That's a very, very great question. In fact, we have in the interest of time, we didn't share all of the differences that we found between different subgroups. One of them is based off of gender. That's a great question, and one of the, interestingly, what we found was that males experienced higher levels of acculturative stress at that time. However, this is all contextualize this by a couple of years, but what we found was that men or boys or young men were more concerned, they had higher levels of acculturative stress, and the reasoning was that they were more pressed and pushed, and they felt more a need to integrate faster so that they could find economic opportunities. And the perspective was that the absence of integration, the absence of being able to feel like you're belonging, you're able to make connections, and you're able to find people, that really raised levels of concerns about not being able to find a job. Whereas what we found was that girls were more concerned about being able to make sure that they had access to education. And I think given the threats to education that they were facing back in Afghanistan, raised these concerns about just being able to make sure that they were able to find access to education, they were able to be successful at it. So there were just different forms of stressors that there were some differences. Some things were similar. For example, the impact of family separation impacted everybody, but there were differences. And this is an example of one of them.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, thank you, Franz. Yes.
Good morning and salam alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Thank you all so very much for having us here. Tiyya Foundation, Mahmoud John, yourself, and everyone else here. We really appreciate your time. I'm a refugee from Afghanistan myself and have been in this sort of work for many, many moons. The one question that I would like to ask in this relation here is, were there any questions asked of the subjects how they could engage and make things easier? We have a tendency in the work that we do to always offer a lot of help, and the exchange for that should be the involvement of the families in their own journey. Sometimes we overlook that. We just enable them, which is a temporary fix. But my interest is in how we can bring the families, the individuals, the community as a whole together to then holistically get together and advocate on their own behalf. Thank you.
I think that's an incredibly important question that I love that question because what we find is that people typically tend to be, not just this particular group of people, but this, what I'm about to explain, was also the case for this group of people. But people typically, just generally speaking, human beings are inclined to move towards self-determination. They like to be able to be in some level of control over what happens, so they naturally have a tendency to want to take leadership, want to take ownership of what happens to them and what happens to their family or to their community and their future and their offspring and their generations. And they like to feel productive. People just generally like to be productive people. So first things first, that tendency just tends to be there in all of us. We all have that. In our participants, we also frequently heard this drive and desire, although remember that this group particularly, these were young people, these were youth who they wanted to do something. They were, even those who we could clearly see were facing mental health challenges, some of the mental health challenges came from not feeling like they were able to be productive, or they felt like they had the potential to do something really great, but it just didn't feel possible. So I want to, one of the things that we found, and generally what I want to encourage, is just really recognizing that general tendency that everybody has in having self-determination, wanting to do something productive, wanting to be out there, and finding ways and pathways and systems and programs that allows that to come out. And then I think once we do have those systems in place is where the question you're asking about, then it's their turn to show up and to take those leadership roles and to take ownership over whatever program is in place. What we found in this group of youth was that intuition and that drive was definitely there, and I think Farzad is a great example of him showing up here, and despite, I'm sure, it being very challenging to present in front of all of you, he's here taking on this leadership role. So I thank you, Farzad, for being here. Yes, let's. Any other questions? Yes, and please, if you want to answer, we can also pose it to the other folks on the panel as well. Yes.
Okay. I'm curious about in your studies, considering your background and other things that you might have done and brought to this. So you're bringing Afghans here into to the U.S., which is so different. Plus, we're the ones that supported the Taliban in the first place. I don't know how many generations know that now, but so there would be that unease, I would think. But I'm wondering how much, if we use the terms I've heard, we have a material society or a material economy, and we have a pride economy. Everyone, that speaks to your self-determination. have you looked at some of the issues happening in the United States, if they're going to be living in the United States and dealing with that, to look at some areas where that pride economy is quite low at this point in the United States? I'm wondering if you have done that in the past and if that had any effect on your studies here.
Interesting. So that's not something that we were looking at in particular. So I can't say that we looked at our findings and what we heard from what the participants shared with us from that angle. What I can say is that there is a lot of literature, definitely not on Afghan populations, but generally speaking, looking at the experiences of Afghans and Middle Easterners and Muslim populations in general in comparison to other minority groups is limited, or much less than what other groups have been studied. But you could pose the same question about a lot of other minority groups. So I think this, sadly, unfortunately, and it gives us a lot of work to do, but that question would be relevant to, I think, almost every single minority group that lives in the U.S., starting from Native American populations to Black Americans and Latinos and many, many other subgroups. And what the literature shows is that despite a lot of the atrocities and inequitable practices that these folks have been exposed to, because of that drive to do well, live well, practice justice, and make your surroundings a more just place, people tend to, at least in their own immediate communities, spread goodness. Spread justice, live well, build communities, contribute to the economy. Generally speaking, human beings, regardless of whatever geopolitical system they may have been exposed to that may impact that pride economy, they have a drive to do well, like live peaceful, equitable lives. And I think that drive supersedes some of the challenges or affronts to that pride economy that the geopolitical climate may impart. And we see that not necessarily with studies on Afghan populations, but definitely with other groups. That's not to say that the spirit of striving towards justice is not there, or that people don't notice it, or they just pretend like it's not there. It is there, and people deal with it in different ways. So some people engage in community activism. They work towards building a more just society, advocating in legal or political platforms. At the same time, this drive to just build healthy communities for your family and for your future generations is one that just really supersedes borders and a lot of these political issues.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes.
Hi, I just had a quick question. So it sounds like language barrier is an issue for many of the refugees that have come from Afghanistan. Do you know how they're currently being connected to services where they can learn the English language?
I'm going to let Mahmoud answer that.
Yeah, thank you for the great question. Yeah, for the language, because there are Access California and Orange County, they have the language program. There are community college like Fullerton College, Santana, Cypress. There are many community colleges. They have the ESL English language classes, not credit classes. For those and also they are here like less than 1 year and 1 day. They are not financially eligible for the POPSA or grant. Most of them go to the non-credit classes, which is the ASL classes. The ASL classes in the elementary school, some of the high school, they offer also for the parent. But we connected them to these resources. Here is the NOCC, which offer the online and in-person classes, but most of them, they receive the laptop. For most of the mom also receive the laptop. Like the Tiyya Foundation, help with the mentor, they send a teacher, some of the volunteer to the family. A mom with a small child, 2 years, 3 years, or 3 months, not able to go to the college, not able to go in person. They're at home, but the mentor go to their family. They help in also how to start the new life, take the mom or dad to the store, help in also what is the name of this fruit, and also how you deal with the cashier, how you speak with the like a storekeeper. This is the things, and also like practically and emotionally also big support, but mentally also support, but practically help. This mentor or this teacher, most of the teachers, they are very qualified. They're very professional. They go to their family 2 days in a week, 3 days in a week. But now we see great change. I have a give example like my wife learning English at home. Didn't go to any ASL classes because the Tiyya Foundation sent the mentor to my home. But she was able to learn English to help like and also with the family. This is the thing. There are many resources we help the families. Yeah, we connect them with the family. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Any other, yes, final questions?
I'm just wondering about the sports that might be introduced. Shufi could speak to that, and what Tiyya is doing around bringing sports to help youth.
Thank you for that question. We used to have a very robust soccer program, and that's something I know Mahmoud's family was familiar with. We had weekly engagements where we brought youth out to the park, and we had coaches that would help kids from all around. You know, all of our programs, we integrate all of our families from different refugee backgrounds, so from countries in the Middle East, North Africa, Central America, South America. There's no restriction. And I think when we had the program, unfortunately, it's no longer active. COVID kind of had a say in that. We weren't able to sustain the program beyond COVID, but it is definitely something we'd love to have activated. But to kind of speak to some of the positive outcomes that came from the soccer program is it's kind of like you don't need to have language to speak with one another. Everyone from around the world knows soccer, loves soccer, you kick the ball, and you just kind of have this connection with one another without even having to know how to speak. And I remember the first time we launched the program, we were anticipating 30 participants, we had 66 children come out. And they were all speaking different languages, but they were all having fun, they were all playing. And I think it's just that moment of normalcy. And I think sports brings that. It's that opportunity to kind of turn off your mind from the stresses and from the shock that was discussed and just enjoy a game of soccer. So I think we'd love to continue it. I know there are other organizations in the community that do have different sports, not just soccer, that I think it's very valuable, but it's something that we cherished at Tiyya, but we're not able to continue. Any other questions?
Really love this research partnership. How did discussions around that come? Because I know when doing a qualitative, you're trying to find a population. This is a population that is already sort of connected to a community, trusts and is maybe willing to be vulnerable and honest in ways that maybe may take certain researchers more time to develop. And so was it snowball sampling? So I'm just kind of curious, and like with those sort of research questions in mind, what does future partnerships look like in terms of research and partnering with a community-based organization who's already earned the trust of those community members?
Yeah, oh my God, that's an amazing question. I think historically, not just building partnerships with the Tiyya Foundation, but generally, historically, what you're saying is very much the case everywhere in the world. So in some of the work that I have done in other countries, and also with Tiyya, the number one most important thing that from the perspective of a researcher that one has to recognize is that you just don't know. Like, this is not your area of expertise, and you are ignorant, and you are like in the hierarchy of everything at the bottom of the food chain, and you need to own that and recognize that you just simply do not know, and a lot of the power dynamics that come into play when you do come in as an academic institution needs to go out the door, or needs to just be like parked right outside of the door in trying to build some of those partnerships. And it all starts with, it really, really starts with social connections and social ties. So some of the very first community organizations that serve Afghan refugees in Iran that I have worked with all come from like small social interactions that you start off somewhere, there's a spark, then there's another spark, and then there's another spark. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes it takes a lot of showing up, a lot of like tenacity and just building a lot of those connections. until the right fit comes about. And I think sometimes we just need to recognize that some research practice partnerships are not a good fit. They just aren't very productive, and then sometimes they are, and they work well, and whatever the researcher brings fits well with what the community partner and the community leaders prioritize. And when that fit happens, I think it's just really cool. Like, it's a really cool thing that happens when that fit is there, because then there's a lot that can come out of it. So like in the partnerships that we've built through Tiyya, with Mahmoud and the Afghan community, we did this project years ago, but currently we kept going at it. We wrote more grants and are continuing to do more work that hopefully is focused on the well-being of Afghan youth. Yes? Yes?
I was just curious with the study, I know it's qualitative, was it that you were doing the interviews yourself, or how was the study?
So we had a team of different researchers who were trained in qualitative research who were conducting it. I wasn't the only person, but they were all done in Farsi and Dadi, so they were all done in the language that the participants were comfortable with. Yes?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Thank you for really touching upon just an area, a group that is oftentimes really just unrecognized. So I'm from a healthcare agency. I'm going to drag my colleague into this. This is Dawn, also from the healthcare agency. And so we work in the public health, behavioral health space. And so my question, what is your recommendation for those of us that are, whether Afghan refugees or otherwise, are engaging with our organizations, because obviously we provide that service in whatever capacity, whether it's behavioral health, public health, one of our clinics, wherever it is that they're going to go. What do you recommend? What educational opportunity is there for us? What trainings are there? And then to even take it to another level, what's your recommendation for policies for how institutions should take the information you have and then build something better?
Interesting. I have to think about that, because that's a deep, like, long-term planning. You're talking about my hopes and dreams now.
And this is the 30,000-foot question.
Yeah.
Organizations such as Tiyya, it may be blessed for the work that you're doing, but we've got to scale this bigger.
Right.
We've got to take this so that it is now built in to the clinics that Dawn has, where her staff are familiar with this.
Yeah. So I think I can speak on the research side of things, and then I think maybe you can address kind of like the from an organizational standpoint what that may look like. So on the research side of things, something came out somewhere. We can just ignore that. Oh, you know what? I think there we go. Hold on. Okay, I'll just press this up. On the research side of things, what we are trying to do is exactly the term that you just used, so thinking about scalability. One of the projects that we're currently working on is validating an intervention, like an actual scalable, brief intervention that we are testing for its effectiveness for its impact on depressive symptoms, that has taken the wisdom that the youth have shared with us, as well as faith elements, so just teachings that the faith has. And we are experimentally actually doing like a longitudinal experimental study to test its effectiveness with a representative sample of Afghan youth in Southern California. And our goal is to be able to then disseminate that as exactly like what you're saying, as an intervention that has been validated, there's like evidence behind it, it's brief, it's scalable, it's very, it can be incorporated into practices that are already implemented that a clinician may already be doing. And so from the research side, we do think a lot about scalability, and we currently have projects that are working on gathering the evidence for that. In terms of trainings, I think what I can speak on is trainings on programs that we may have developed or that we may know other researchers have developed, and I'm happy to share some of the interventions that I know are out there, or prevention work, not just intervention, but prevention works that are out there. in this particular area, I'm going to let Shirley talk about that. I think in terms of policy, one of the things that I think may be helpful in having advocacy for is, I'm not sure exactly how to frame that because I'm not in the policy world, but services that are rooted in community wisdom rather than what we may think has evidence around it. So a lot of times when you have, for example, if you are a behavioral health agency, your go-to may be that, like, the intervention that you need to use, I can speak it in the world of mental health, like the intervention that it just must make sense, like it just makes sense, is an intervention that addresses PTSD symptoms, for example. However, that may be nowhere near what the person who you are interacting with is dealing with. So I think systematically, if there's a paradigm shift around, let me have trainings not just about how to do this particular intervention, but about changing my paradigm about looking at the world and not necessarily thinking that I get to choose what the treatment that this population needs is, and instead coming with this place of humility and listening to folks and then together coming up with a solution is what I would advocate for at the policy level.
No, thank you. I mean, I agree with all that you just mentioned. I think in times where we try to find clinicians to support our community members, the first need is language. But I think it's more than just language, because you could have a Pashto speaker or an Arabic speaker, but still cannot connect necessarily to the needs of that individual, especially with refugees who are coming and fleeing displacement and violence. I think there needs to also be not just cultural sensitivity, but historical understanding. And I can speak from experience. I'm just now going to therapy, and I ignored therapy for a long time because when I did do it, I noticed I had to explain myself. There's a lot of explaining, like, well, I'm Palestinian, and this is my story. Oh, by the way, 1948, there was this conflict. Some people don't know this, and you have to kind of explain it to get to the root of the trauma you're experiencing. And that gets exhausting. You don't want to go to therapy and your first session is you explaining something to somebody who doesn't understand it. So that historical context is important, and especially for these families right now. Like, I'm not asking people to study 50 years of conflict, but at least catch up, what's going on right now. Maybe I'm coming in because of just something recent that happened. So know what happened, so that when you talk to your participant and talking to your client, then you can get to the root of the suffering. And I think for me today, I finally found a Palestinian therapist who's really helping me, because I don't have to explain anything. I can just say, I don't feel good, and she just knows why. And that's something that subtlety is what we need, I think, from our communities. We need that subtlety of understanding and not excessive explanation. Because I think the fear we have too is that in our cultures, you don't talk about your problems, especially to strangers. Even amongst each other, we talk about the problems, but not on a very deep emotional level. So the subtlety of understanding that emotional connection allows space to speak out more freely. And I think that's what a lot of clinicians need to study, understand, and have support for, and resources. And I think nonprofits and organizations can step into that role.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So I have one more question actually. It's basically on the presentation, something that I saw was financial stability and the fear of deportation. So we as the community, how can we hold the government accountable? Ensure they pass policies to basically help the immigrants to integrate into the community. Like, there is only so much non-profit organizations can do. So like, sometimes you have to ask the big boys in the government to also help the immigrants.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And I'll pass it to either of you if you want to answer this as well. I mean, right now, I think it's very difficult to speak out with this administration. We have very few allies now. And I think, to be honest, it's community where we have to be the strongest. Our political allies we have to find and we have to support as much as possible. I think there is a level of civic engagement we have to take more seriously, especially when there are those lone voices in government that are speaking on our behalf. we have to really support them. It's not only just verbal support. I did an Instagram post that likes this individual. No, there needs to be financial support. There needs to be actual campaigning that we have to get up and do. And I think a lot of our communities don't do that. We're afraid of it, we don't understand it, so we need to kind of be involved civically. But right now, we have to be safe. And I think there is very limited education right now in our communities about who are ICE agents, what is deportation. You know, we have some people, even just this past weekend, we have family gatherings every last Sunday of the month. We have family members that genuinely don't know who ICE is and why that's a problem. So that simple education and knowledge and legal understanding for our community is important so that we feel safe and protected. And then once that's been established, I think taking on government and elected officials, especially we have a November election coming up, primaries are just as important as presidential. So I think that's something we also have to activate.
I think one thing I want to add is sometimes, going back to the issue of safety, you have to know when it is safe for you to speak up and stand up and speak. And sometimes as a community, you have to also know when it's not your turn, but your allies' turns. So for example, in this room, those of us who either personally or have family members who could be directly impacted if we do speak up and could jeopardize our safety, we need to know if it's our turn to take a step back. And those of us who don't have those challenges and are therefore privileged need to take a step forward. Sometimes it's not just about us knowing what we can do, but also recognizing that when it may not be the wisest thing for us to do at that particular moment, but our other folks who have certain privileges that may enable them to speak up, be vocal, do all of what Shukri also just mentioned. So sometimes sometimes it's not just about when to speak up, but also when not to speak up. If you're if you have long-term plans, in the context of a place where you do have a community of other folks who are able to speak up, whether it's on your behalf or on your community's behalf or whatever it is. Sometimes things have to be done in a collective. Is there anything else you'd like to know? No? Okay. Yes.
Right. Yeah, one thing I want to add, because most of the resettlement agency, they have the instruction in Pashto, Dari in English language. They already share with the community if there is ICE stop you on the way to home or driving, how you can deal with them. The same if they come and also knock the door of your home, and also how you can deal. This is the things, and also there are all the instruction we already we provided to the community, to the people, and also during this time, they must have the document with them.
All right. Okay, this will be our last question.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
No.
Just to echo everything you guys said, very well said. We are in really dark times, but that doesn't mean we cannot speak up. This is a democracy, and dissent is part of it. But as Dr. Hussaini so astutely said, we just need to know when to engage and when not to. Please do not be silent. Speak when you are in a safe zone and you can speak your mind. This is very important. We're being scrutinized from every direction. And if every one of us is quiet, there will be no voices out there. So please calculate it, step forward when you have to and when you need to, and advocate for all of that. And then the secondary thing I wanted to mention to everyone here, we are more than happy to engage with any of you that know your rights for the community. I know there's many out there doing it. Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, CHIRLA, is also part of that. We will also be able to provide you red cards, which I looked in my wallet. I gave the last one out. This comes in a variety of languages. You can keep it at home. You can keep it by your door. If anybody knocks on your door, you know what your rights are. It's in your pocket. God forbid you're pulled over. You are aware of your rights. And advocacy, information, correct information that is disseminated amongst the community so we are all on the same page is vital and critical. The Afghan community has a tendency to say, so-and-so said this, so then that must be the rule. It is not. Advocate, folks. Tell them to go to the source and find the proper information, because she said that might put me someplace where I don't want to be. Thank you for listening to my rant. I appreciate you. We are at your service if you need anything. Thank you.
Thank you. A huge shout out to Tiyya, who's really out there on the streets and being scrutinized for their incredible work. So thank you for being here. And thank you all for being here today. We appreciate your attendance, for listening, engaging in this conversation. And a huge thank you to our speakers, Dr. Refugee, So please feel free, you're welcome to stay, enjoy some delicious pastries, speak to our presenters today, and again, thank you.